What's up, my people of the internet? It's Jason back with another episode of On the Wall with Jiu Jitsu Five-O. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about the never-ending debate of gi versus no gi training, and hopefully I can give you some information to help you with your training schedule and what you dedicate your time toward, just to help make you the best grappler that you can be and help you make the most efficient use of your limited amount of time that you probably have when you're training on the mats. Before we get started, as always, we have to give a shout out to, our sponsors. Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by one of my favorites, Totino's Pizza Rolls. Do you ever find yourself drunk at 1 o'clock in the morning and you're looking for just a delicious, quick, easy snack that you can either microwave or put in the oven, and you don't mind burning the absolute shit out of the roof of your mouth because you're too fat and or drunk to care about biting into the pizza roll before it's actually cooled down and ready for you to eat it? Try Totino's Pizza Rolls. All right. And as you know, that everything I just said is a complete lie. And Totino's Pizza Rolls is, they have not paid me a single dime to give them a shout out. But I will say, if you are looking for a superior pizza roll, Totino's is your brand. All right, let's get into it. So gi versus no gi training. What is the gi? What is no gi? If you're brand new to jiu-jitsu, maybe you're tuning into this podcast because, you just are interested in jiu-jitsu training. You want to learn a little bit more about it. Or you just like hearing the sound of my voice, that's cool too. But for those of you that are new to jiu-jitsu, training in a gi is basically just a martial arts uniform. So you have a long jacket and a long set of pants and your martial arts belt. That's it, your jiu-jitsu belt. No gi training is basically just training in shorts and a t-shirt. Most no gi training is done in some grappling shorts and a rash guard, which is a little bit tighter fitting. But other than that, it's just basically wearing heavy clothing, gi training, and wearing lighter clothing is no gi training. That's how I look at it. So there are a lot of, there is a lot of talk about what is the best for policing specifically, and what cops should be spending their time training. If they do train jiu-jitsu, should they be training in the gi? Should they be training no gi? And I'm here to tell you that it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. But what I wanted to do in this episode is just really break down some benefits of each and then give you kind of a training schedule that you can follow based on my own personal experience if you have the time to do it. And if not, that's cool too. But again, just talk about the benefits of each and how you can use them to make yourself a better grappler. So let's start with the gi. Number one, the biggest benefit is just understanding how to, use people's clothing to control them. So now when I say use people's clothing, I'm referring to thick, heavy clothing. So jackets, hooded sweatshirts, particularly long pants. You learn how to grip sleeves, you learn how to grip collars, all that kind of stuff. It can be really beneficial in setting up takedowns or even when controlling people on the ground. There's a lot of things that you can do, by grabbing onto someone's heavier clothing. The gi allows you to do that. The other benefit that I like about gi training for cops or even self-defense scenarios is that you understand how to break grip. So if someone grabs onto your clothing, specifically if you're a cop and you wear long pants or, your uniform, shirt, vest, whatever, you need to understand how to break grips. And the gi can really help you. If you're training in the gi, that can really help teach you how to do that stuff. So, just really using other people's clothing to control them and then understanding how to defend grips. Those are two really big benefits of training in a gi. The other benefit specifically for cops in training with the gi is that if you understand, if you're trying to make training realistic, and we hear this all the time, suspects don't wear gis on the street. Cops don't wear gis on the street. I see that in internet comments all the time. I've heard it from other trainers, and it's one of those things where, yes, that is true. But if you think about what you wear on the street as a cop, typically it's long pants and a uniform shirt and a vest, obviously duty belt. And those things limit your movement, right? So you're a little bit more restricted. You feel heavier because you are wearing like 20 pounds of gear on the street. You're not going to be able to do a lot of the dynamic stuff that maybe you'd be able to do if you're wearing shorts and a t-shirt. So while it is true that suspects don't wear gis on the street, although that would be fucking hilarious if you went to a call and you had to deal with somebody who's wearing like full on jujitsu gi. As a matter of fact, if that happens to you, please send me the video, hit me up. I would love to watch that and share it with the world. Sorry, that's my soapbox tangent moment of the day. Sometimes I do that. But if you're training in a gi, you're going to be more restricted. And that is a big factor for cops that wear long pants and uniform shirts and belts. So obviously you should also be training in full gear. That's the most realistic method of training that you can do, is putting on all of your gear and training in that. Obviously, you're not going to be able to do that at your jiu-jitsu gym. You're not going to be able to wear your gear, on nice mats. Obviously, like I have behind me, I don't wear a lot of duty gear on my mats because I don't want to ruin my expensive mats. So a gi can really help sort of simulate the uniform that you wear on patrol, and it can help weigh you down, restrict your movement a little bit, and make it a little more realistic to what you're dealing with when you're, wrestling around with people. So consider that when you're thinking about, why should I train in the gi or dedicate some of my time or more of my time into the gi. Grips is a huge one. Learning how to break grips, defend grips, learning how to use grips and grab onto people's clothing, and then also weighing yourself down and restricting your movement a little bit. Those three things I think are probably the biggest benefits of training the gi specifically for cops. And then moving into no gi, obviously that also has benefits. I think with no gi training, the biggest benefit for guys that work the street is really just going back to, I talked about grips in the gi. Training no gi also has a lot of benefits as it relates to grips. So if you are dealing with somebody that's wearing a t-shirt, for example, t-shirts move around a lot, and it's super common for, I see this all the time in training videos where cops will try to grab onto somebody's t-shirt and pull them down to the ground or try to use it to like force them up against a wall or a squad, whatever the case is. And as you know, t-shirts it's not a good tool to control somebody because they're so loose fitting and they move around. So no gi training, when you're training in just a rash guard or against somebody in a rash guard or a t-shirt, you have to learn how to adapt your grips. So underhooks is a really good example of that. Collar ties is another good example. You learn how to do, 2-on-1 wrist control, reverse kimuras. I use those a lot, actually, when we start from our feet. There's a lot of different takedowns and things you can set up. So grips, number one, with no-gi is probably the biggest benefit that you'll get out of training in that modality or that method, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes they use big words. Modality is probably the biggest word that I've used today. So anyway, grips is a big one. And then, there's a lot more to be said probably from a wrestling perspective in no-gi. I think you learn how to wrestle a little bit more, not only just from your feet and taking people down to the ground, but also from the ground. There's a lot more similarities between no-gi training and traditional wrestling than there are probably between, gi training and wrestling. So it's good to mix it up, I would say. No-gi training is also just fun. I really have a good time training no-gi because it is a little bit faster paced and, it's a little bit more like, again, just more similar to wrestling, which I have a lot of fun learning, especially if you've been training jiu-jitsu a long time and you want to get better at wrestling aspect of jiu-jitsu. It's great for the street, obviously, but it's also a lot of fun. So no-gi can give you those things. But yeah, honestly, that's probably the biggest benefits to training no-gi. Having said though, or having talked about the benefits, I should say, of each, the question always comes up, like, what is the best version or the best way to train for realistic self-defense or for the realities of the street? And I've been training now for about 14 years, both gi and no gi. And I honestly don't believe that there is one that is necessarily like better than the other. At the end of the day, I think you just need to get on the mats and train. Show up consistently 2-3 days a week, even 1 day a week, and train. So whether that's always in a gi or whether that's always no gi, because that's the only thing that you have time for, that's okay. Don't obsess about, God, I only train in the gi. I never train no gi, and I don't feel like I'm prepared for a street encounter. if you're training consistently in one version or the other, it doesn't necessarily matter. You're still going to be light years ahead of where most people are going to be in terms of your grappling skills. And, there are some schools out there that train primarily or exclusively in a gi or exclusively no gi. Obviously, like 10th Planet's a good example. They're a no gi school, but it's not to say that a grappler in an all gi environment or a grappler in an all no gi environment aren't going to be able to handle themselves in a street fight. Like, you're still learning how to grapple, and that's at the end of the day what the goal is. It's to be a good grappler. Now, I will also say, if you are a competitor, which I'm not, but I train with a lot of competitors. I usually train in our morning competition class, and if you are gearing up for a competition that is a no-gi competition, obviously you're going to want to spend more of your time training no-gi as you lead up to that, and vice versa with the gi, right? So I think that's going to make a little bit of a difference, or is going to shape your training a little bit more if you are a competitor. I would also say that even if you're not a competitor, but you're just looking to get better at jiu-jitsu and you have time. Now, I'll say that again. If you have time, which most cops don't, because a lot of us work, I say us, I'm not a cop anymore, but when I did work, I worked 4 12-hour shifts. Then I would have 4 days off. So I would not be able to really train on the days that I was on. And a lot of you are probably like me, where you're working really long shifts, and in your off days, you have a limited amount of time, to catch up on parental duties, household chores, all the stuff that piled up, when you were out fucking around at work the last 4 days. So if you have time to train, it's good to mix it up. It's good to train gi and no, do both, right? If you have a limited amount of time, that's where you have to really decide, like, what are you getting the most benefit from? Do you feel like you're getting more benefit from training in a gi? Do you feel like you're getting more benefit from no gi? And you can kind of make a decision from there. Now, the other thing with that too is just thinking about, or I should say, being honest with yourself about what benefit you're getting from either gi training or no gi training. And what I mean by that is, I've found in my years of training, I've found this to be true with a lot of people I talk to. When I ask them, what do you think is better, gi or no gi? And other people that have trained a long time, if I ask this question to them, or even if they haven't been training a long time, if I ask what's better for the street, gi or no gi, I usually find that the answer is going to depend on who it's coming from. So if you have somebody that is really good in the gi, and that's all they've ever trained, and they have a very limited amount of no-gi training, that person's typically going to tell me that training in the gi is the best for law enforcement. They're going to give you a million reasons why. And usually it's because that's the only thing they know, right? And so that's also true for the no-gi side of things. If I ask that question to someone who exclusively trains no-gi, or maybe has a very limited amount of training in a gi, they're going to tell me that no-gi training is better, and they'll have a million reasons why. And usually the reasons come back to, well, suspects don't wear gis on the street, or vice versa. If the other guy on the gi side says, well, suspects don't wear, no-gi gear on the street, there's always going to be reasons for both. I've also found that especially for like younger, stronger, more athletic people, they tend to gravitate toward no-gi training more than gi training because they find quicker success with it. Because no-gi is a little bit faster, it's more slippery, it's more difficult to hold on to somebody and keep them pinned down and controlled than in a gi, typically, not always, but I find that young, strong, athletic people like no-gi training more for those reasons, especially if you're brand new to it, because, if you're a brand new white belt in a gi, chances are you're going to be absolutely just murdered by everybody from day one, because you have no idea what you're doing. You don't know how to grab onto stuff. If you do have grips, you don't really know what to do with them. And, on the no-gi side of things, when maybe you don't have those grips, you don't have to worry about those grips as much. You can be a little bit sloppier with technique, I think, when you're new, especially if you're going against other newer people. And if you're bigger, stronger, faster than that person, you're probably going to be a little bit, quote unquote, better than that other new person that maybe isn't as big and strong as fast as you. So having that initial quick success typically, is going to make no-gi training more appealing and more exciting if you are one of those types of people. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't train also in the gi. So if you do have a limited amount of time, which most of us do, kind of like what I said, going back to shift work, especially if you're working 12-hour shifts, which oftentimes turn into, 14, depending on if you get stuck on a late call. And then you have all of this other shit that piles up on your off days that you have to take care of. You might only be able to train jujitsu, 2 days a week, right? So what I would say is try to focus on a mix of both if you can. If you have, 4 days a week to dedicate to training jujitsu, mix it up. Maybe that looks like, 2 days in the gi and 2 days no gi, or maybe it's 3 days in a gi and 1 day no gi. Some type of mix to where you get to train both modalities. See, I went back to my big word of the day. That's going to, I think, carry you further and make you a better all-around grappler if you can mix it up. But if you only have, a day or two, one thing you can consider doing is just, switch it up every other week. So maybe this week I train in the gi on my 1 or 2 days that I had to dedicate. And then next week I train no gi. And then the following week I go back to the gi. And so you're just swapping, every other week you're training gi and no gi. And that's a really good way to mix it up. The school I train at, we do, again, I go to like the morning comp classes. And so there are a lot of competitors. We tend to focus more on no gi, but our schedule at my gym is Monday, Tuesday, no gi, Wednesday, gi, Thursday, no gi, Friday, gi. So we do 3 days of no gi training, 2 days of training in the gi, which honestly, I find that to be kind of a perfect balance if you have 5 days a week to train. Now, I usually don't make it in 5 days a week. I try to be there 3 or 4, but I feel like it's a pretty good mix. So if you have 5 days a week to train, absolutely do as much of both as you can, because you're going to see benefits from that. But hopefully that gives you a little bit of food for thought, some things to think about in terms of training schedule, because I know it is difficult. Like, I get asked that question all the time. Like, how often should I be training gi? How often should I be training no gi? What does my training schedule look like? And it can be a little bit tricky, but there are ways around it. And I should also say, if you are a premium member of the Jiu Jitsu Five-O app, you can hit me up anytime and I can help design a training schedule for you. And I'm happy to do that. I can break it down with no gi. If you want to add some workouts in there, I'm happy to help you out with those as well, just to keep you on track and give you a schedule, because I know that's a huge point of contention and a huge issue for people that work patrol, especially. It can be difficult to kind of figure that stuff out. So if you're a premium member of the Jiu Jitsu Five-O app, hit me up. You can text me, message me right from the app, and I can help design a plan for you. So really, at the end of the day, it's going to all come down to how much time you have and what your goals are. And don't overthink it. Don't get caught up in what is the best for the street, what's the most realistic for the street. Because like I said at the beginning of this episode, I don't believe that there is a best. There's not one that is like superior to the other. They both have a lot of great benefits. They both are going to make you a good grappler. They both are going to give you skills that will carry over onto the street, both from a control standpoint and from a self-defense standpoint. Don't get caught up in all of the chatter about what is the best method for the street, because there isn't one. At the end of the day, showing up and training on the mat against a fully resisting opponent, whether they're wearing a gi or not, is going to make you a better fighter, a better grappler. And that's another real quick point too, before we close out for today, is another thing to consider. And I brought this up before on social media. I think I've talked about this, but one thing you can do is train in the gi and have your partner train in no gi gear. We do that all the time. And the opposite can be true too. You can wear no gi gear and your training partner can wear a gi. So if you have like a grappling club at your police department, for example, or even at your gym after class, if you guys are sticking around if y'all are sticking around to do more training. See, I moved down south from the north, so I'm trying to not say you guys as much, and I'm replacing that with y'all. So if y'all have a grappling club or you want to stick around after class, put on different gear, mix it up. Have your partner wear a gi, you're wearing no gi. Now they have to figure out how to control you with, no gi grips, and you have to figure out how to control them using their clothing. You can also use no gi grips. It doesn't really matter, but it's, I think that's actually probably one of the best ways to train gi versus no gi, is have partners wear separate stuff, especially if both of you are cops, because that way it probably is going to be more realistic where one person's wearing a gi and the other person's not wearing a gi, and both people can get benefits from the training, in a short amount of time. So maybe I just solved the problem. everybody. Maybe that is the ultimate solution to this debate about gi versus no gi training. Have one person wear the gi and the other person wears no gi, and problem solved. There you go. Anyway, I appreciate you tuning in to this episode of the podcast. And as always, go check out the Jiu Jitsu Five-O training app. I put out a ton of technique videos. We have full-length courses that are all scenario-based that you can access on demand anytime. I've got breakdown videos in there where I take realistic incidents or real incidents from the street, talk about common themes and different techniques and solutions that you can use to help solve common problems. We've got workouts that can help keep you in fight shape that you can do from anywhere. So it really is a great supplemental training tool that you can use to really just help improve your skills and kind of fill the gaps that are left with your agency's training. Or even if you don't get to make it into the gym as much as you'd like, and you can't dedicate a bunch of hours to, jiu-jitsu training on the mats, I have a lot of stuff that you can do on your own, at home, on duty with the partner. And, it starts at $8 a month. So you really can't go wrong. Put a lot of time and effort into that and to give everybody a tool that they can use to just help improve their skills and go home safe at the end of the day. So go check that out. And we will see you on the next episode of On the Wall. Thanks again for tuning in. Stay safe. Go train. Yeah.